All right, everybody, time to talk about and show escaping the back. Before we get into the specific escapes that we're going to cover in subsequent videos, I just want to give you an overview of what your goals are conceptually trying to escape this position. Now, as we discussed in the back control video, you want to control the rotation of your partner. Like if Rory's on my back, he can have direct rotational control via the seat belt and the hooks where he's attaching his chest to my back, and I can't rotate independently from him. Or he can have lever-based rotational control via the Kimura where I can't rotate independently of him. So, Jiu-Jitsu is actually not that complicated when you get right down to it. I just need to undo his rotational control. So my goal when escaping the back is going to be to disconnect my chest from his back if it's direct rotational control. So I might bring my head to this side. Mostly in these kinds of escapes, we're using the floor to scrape our partner off our back. If, for instance, we're around. You go to the other side here, same sort of thing. I'd be trying to scrape him off of me using the floor and misalign his chest from my back, removing that rotational control. Or I want to be able to spin into him, so you will see, occasionally this kind of stuff where you're able to rotate into your partner. We'll cover both aspects. Again, we're pretty much using the floor as a wedge, or we're using levers to our partner's shoulder or hip to try to control their rotation while we turn around and face them in their guard. So we're either escaping to a guard or we're ending up into someone's guard. For my money, that's the only thing that qualifies as an escape from the back. Rolling over and giving up the mount is not an escape. I know some people disagree with me.
Yeah, Rob and I were just kind of discussing this, and it's interesting depending on how you're kind of viewing this, because are you technically escaping the back? Yes, someone's no longer on your back, but now the argument becomes, what is technically, did you better your position?
Yeah.
And in some ways, I'm like, well, okay, back control is the top of the hierarchy. This is where there's the most submission threats. Your weapons are facing away from your opponent. And so, to me, there's a lot more risk involved when someone's on your back. However, I absolutely agree that we'd rather escape and be able to get back into a guard of some kind. But then you had some...
Yeah, so my views on this are, there tend to be two camps. It's pretend, but whatever. Two camps in jiu-jitsu these days. It's the competition people and the self-defense people. And I guess my argument would be, regardless of which camp you belong to, I just don't think that a back escape into mount counts as an escape, because in competition they're both worth 4 points, so there isn't like a hierarchical difference. It's not like the back is worth 6 points because it's so much more dominant, and then I get back down into mount that's only worth 4 points. They're both worth 4 points. It's the same thing. I've traded one bad position for another. If we look at point scoring, oftentimes if you got to my back without going through the dominant top process of like passing, mounting, and then taking the back, if you just got on my back and then we rotate around, I'll still get my mount points. If we're talking self-defense, you could argue very easily that mount is worse than
I would rather someone be on my back if there's punches involved.
It takes a fair bit of skill to finish, to damage you, to hurt you from the back. To hurt you from the mount, any idiot, with elbows and fists and a skull can hurt you really badly from the mount. So it's very much a lateral trade. So I don't view that as an escape. It's kind of like I wouldn't view pulling out of an armbar and ending up in a triangle as an escape. Like I escaped the armbar right into a triangle. I know it's a little bit of a semantic argument, but for instance, for those of you who are new to the sport, you have not heard of EBI and EBI overtime, which is a submission-only rules format where both participants can only win the regulation period by submission. If there's no submission, there's a draw and you go to overtime. You get to start on the other person's back or start an armbar, irrelevant for this discussion. They consider going from the back to the bottom of mount an escape. And I think that encourages hellaciously bad jiu-jitsu. I mean, you will get very, very good at defending the back from it, so I shouldn't say that overall in every aspect encourages bad jiu-jitsu. But in that specific circumstance where your goal is just to roll like a maniac until the other person is mounting you, that's not good jiu-jitsu. That doesn't exhibit, proper principles of alignment and controlling levers and stuff like that. You're just performing a movement, and I'm not saying it's not a technical movement at all, but but you're performing a movement that's based around the idea that, man, I hope this person just gives up on being on my back and takes the mount, which is honestly the right thing to do. And it's the same thing for me as the person controlling the back. Because of the rule set, I'm encouraged to hold on to the back for dear life rather than just perform the correct thing, which is anytime somebody's trying to like remove my back control, I should try to mount them. I should try to get on top. And it turns those things into liabilities, which I very much disagree with. But
yeah, and so for you guys, what this means is when we're going into the back escapes, we're just going to be working on showing you guys how to dial in a little bit of the end range of motions when you're going through that escape to make sure that you get into a proper guard, because it's one thing to escape back control and then also have to then try and deal with somebody when they're in full mount and they're strong in full mount with alignment, and they've shifted that mindset already. They're like, oh, I'm in full mount now. I'm now going to start going into my game from here. If they have one, especially when they're higher belts, they will. Where when you have that transitional period when someone is losing that back control and they're like, I have to now move to full mount, there's going to be opportunities to take advantage of. And so when Rob is here escaping back control, you're going to have like transitional periods here where as Rob's starting to scrape me off, I'm having to change my control, letting go of him to try and base and build myself up. That's going to be the best time, the most reliable time that he's going to be able to take advantage of to be able to actually get his legs back into play and to be able to get back to guard. So whether or not, it doesn't really matter the semantics of the argument when you're right here as like a beginner learning. The only thing we want to encourage is that when you're trying to escape back control, you're doing the best that you can to be able to actually get back to a guard.
Yeah, exactly. And this is going to be a bit of it's a tightrope walk, because if you're really trying super hard to just escape the position, if Rory jumps on my back, all these dominant positions are such a problem because Rory's got his entire body working against half my body, and now it's half my body and it's facing the wrong way. So basically, I'm using my arms, and like as you get more technical, you'll be using your legs a little bit, and you'll be using body position. But for the most part, it's his arms and legs and his most powerful mechanisms pointed at me against just my arms, and they're pointed the wrong way to be powerful to impact him. So if I'm overly committed to stripping his hooks and getting him off of my back, he's going to choke me. If all I do is just grab his arms and don't let him choke me, I think we've talked about the idea of taking your ball and going home. This is not good defense. Like by itself, if all I do is this, especially if I'm stronger than my opponent, I'm just grabbing their wrists or grabbing their sleeves or just holding on for dear life. I've even seen people just like clamp onto this bottom arm and just keep the other person there because they're just so much stronger than they are, and they consider that good defense. That is absolutely.
I'm happy staying here. And when it comes to like competition rule set, because there's no further I can go within the hierarchy of positions, I'm not going to get called for stalling here either. And so if someone wants to just hold on to this, now while we're training, we want to experience more jiu-jitsu movements. So I don't like staying here in a training aspect, but I'm going to just chill here. If Rob wants to just hold on to me, it's like, I'm on your back, man. Like I'm going to win no matter what. Yeah,
so we have to consider that. We're trying to ride the line between defending the chokes and even some of the other submissions, arm bars, things like that, and also trying to misalign our partner's chest from our back or remove their lever control, get some sort of rotation of our own so we can turn to face them or get our hips out of the way. So just keep in mind, it's going to be difficult, and while you're trying to escape, you will be submitted a little bit more often in the development phase, but don't worry about that. That's part of the learning process. If your only goal is to not be submitted, then, go ahead, do this, but, prepare to suck at jiu-jitsu forever.
So we're just going to stay cuddling like this, huh?
Yep.